Okay. Hello, everyone. Somehow I'm recording another episode today. And I was a bit bored, and I thought I speak about something that at some point probably would take shape. And so really when it comes to speaking or communicating, it's all about where your attention goes. You know, when I was younger, people would tell me to concentrate. I wouldn't give a shit. Like, it would... People would tell me to pay attention, but they hadn't earned my attention. And at some point my attention, it turned into, like, the best metaphor I could say is like a bird. So you look at a bird and you see that the ancient metaphor for knowledge was a tree. I think the best metaphor for human consciousness is a bird. And consciousness has landed on a branch. So your conscious existence, you could look at life from the branch you're in, which is, or you could look at it from the sky. The bird can fly in the sky and see the whole forest. When I was younger, what was missing from my life was an awareness and attention to the collective ways that life was happening. You see, you just live individually as a person. You go about your life, and then you get a collective experience. Then you notice that the collective has been there the whole time. It's like all these people who discover truth, they realize truth has been here. They're new to the scene. And so for the title of today's episode, why did I say transcendental agencies? And in some sense, what do you call it? And conscious employees. So, there's a hilarious story behind this, okay? In 2014, I started giving these talks, and I think it was maybe a year ago, 2 years ago. So right now it's 2023. In 2021, my father came to me and he told me, yo, it's like, he didn't say like that, he told me it's like you're working for an invisible company. That's what he told me. He told me it's as if you're like an employee of an invisible company, and it's as if this company's asked you to do 10,000 talks and you're just doing it without any sort of, like, compensation or even, like, that sort of notion, right? But the strange feeling of why I feel I should give these talks, there is no reason really behind it. It's just like, it's kind of like a command found in one's own authority of truth, So, at the time I was like, oh my God, my dad's sense of humor, But then it made me think, right, about the future. And so I have a method. I've designed a method. I mean, it's pretty, like, it's called looking. For many people, this is an uncommon method, So let's see, let me give this a bit of momentum here. So the idea of, I was trying to think about, like, okay, so this idea of like a transcendental agency, all right, the thought of it emerged. The idea, I didn't take it so seriously until today. I thought like, yo, maybe there's a way to speak about this, you know, because some things that may be abstract, imagine some person sees something and comes to the tribe and says, you know, I'll give you an example. Imagine the first human being ever who saw a buffalo, right? And he saw a buffalo and he ran to the tribe and he's like, I saw a furry creature, you know, bigger than us walking, right? And everybody was like, no, this guy's lying, full of shit. You know, it's like, get this guy out of the tribe, right? Until then, they all saw the buffalo. And then they're like, oh my God, there's buffalo out here, right? So similarly, we are under the impression, oh my God, we're just this. We think we're just this, and then there's going to be a moment where, like, oh my God moment, where we realize what we've been, right? I think it's a fair argument to say that when we look at the past, we see blind spots they couldn't. So right now, we're experiencing blind spots that the future will see. Right, when I give these talks, I don't have this assumption that I don't have blind spots. The only difference is, you see, for me, I did something that was very strange. You know, I was this kid raised in a theocracy. Man, I'm trying to say a bunch of ideas at the same time, and I didn't finish the last one. Pretty much, I thought about human beings working right now, and then I thought about the future of work, and then I thought about the creation of transcendental agencies, right? At some point, right? Like, what has human beings done? They found a new consciousness as creatures. They stepped out of the jungle, built their own world, and then they're trying to remember nature again, poetically. You understand? Like, imagine the guy, like, you know, imagine this billionaire that's destroying like billions of trees with a bulldozer company, and then he's walking with his daughter in the garden and says, look, sweetie, isn't this tree beautiful? Right? Aren't these flowers beautiful? And the child's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And little does she know, like, what's going on, right? It's a good plot for a movie. Somebody go make this film. And guys, whatever you do, these Mr.Within talks, they're intended for the universal sector. They will most likely be present until mankind. You know, I'm this person who always like, oh my God, I'm not going to be around to see the advanced civilization, but I could have my past archetypes be around, right? But anyways, I'm going to focus here. See, the thing I wanted to tell you, it's this idea of the transcendental agency, the idea of the future of work. Okay. There was something else I was going to say, but I, you know, tangent my tangent thought, and then it became too many tangents. And it's like when a person goes on a tangent, they're going at like a certain degrees. Now imagine it becomes 360-degree tangent. You come back to the same position. You know what it is? This world is literally like God is holding a ring. Like, imagine like this metal ring. And the part where God's finger is on it, right, we can't see. So imagine somebody holding like a circle, like some circular object, okay, like holding a hula hoop with their hand, and the part that they're gripping, I'm saying like that's a metaphor for the divine. Why? Because mankind can't see behind his origin, and he can't see past his death, right? We can't see before birth, and we don't have access after death, supposedly. So the idea is that, okay, right now we have access. What do we do with the access to the life that we have right now, right? For me, I sometimes wake up and it's not even a prayer. It's more like, okay, I'm breathing now. What's the best strategy that this system can come up with, right? You know, for me, this was I was like this. This is, I remember what I was gonna say. The thing was, I was saying that when I was this kid raised in a theocracy, okay, in a religious, environment, and in that religious environment, I suddenly came to Canada. So from Iran, I immigrated to Canada, right? And so my mind had all this ethical programming from one cultural program. And when I came into this cultural program, right, the ethics of this called Western life and the ethics of Eastern life are very different, believe it or not. Or at least of some cultures, not all cultures. Right? So the thing I'm trying to tell you is when I came here, it was as if this kid, like they put a religious kid, right, in a place where God was not the focus, and the focus was in some sense everything else. Do you understand? And so my mind had to find God in a godless world, believe it or not, right? Subconsciously, I'm saying this. Okay, consciously, I was very secular, you know. But what I'm trying to say is that my mind from a religious environment came to a secular environment. It had the subconscious religious context active, okay? And so what I'm saying is, just like a religious person sees God as inconceivable, the closest thing to God for the human being is in some sense, I would say, God, religion is its own path, but I would say at the same time, it is for secular audiences, right? What can replace the inconceivable? If we were to think what else is inconceivable, the answer is actually the future. So do you understand? If you're not worshiping God, you're most likely worshiping the future, right? Because the future is inconceivable, the human being's attention is going to the inconceivable. Why is everybody caring for what they're going to do tomorrow? Why aren't they just done? Right? Why aren't you as a human being, why is nobody not planning for tomorrow? So anyways, what I'm trying to say is the same relationship a religious person can have with an inconceivable God, okay, with the greatness of an inconceivable God, is the same thing a secular person can have with the greatness of the future. It's literally, it fits, they're parallel. The greatness of the inconceivable future and the greatness of an inconceivable God are the same, right? And this is why I'm saying that advanced civilization is the ultimate and smartest common denominator. This is Mr. Within's gift. So, I'm going to say something incredible right now. And I'm going to tell you, whoever you are, whatever being you are, imagine for a moment you close your eyes and you realize behind your eyes, behind your eyelids, what is watching is an original energy. And even if you're a person who you're like, I don't like ideology, I don't like spirituality, it's fine. At the core, you teach on an energetic level. If the person doesn't understand if the person understands energetically, or let me say it this way, the greatest thing that a teacher, let's say the teacher archetype, wants from the student archetype is for the student archetype to realize how much more there is beyond the teacher archetype. You know, they say those who can't do teach, right? And teachers are offended by that, but teachers should be honored by that because there is a value to that. Okay, and the value is that the student realizes that there are so many levels ahead of where you are. And if you think, for example, whoever you are, if you're a kid in school hearing my talk, think about all the levels, all the amounts of problems, your unique intelligence that has never existed before. Your unique DNA is getting a chance to solve problems that no one has ever solved, right? Do you understand? Imagine there was a door and DNA was the key, and we tried 8 billion different keys and we couldn't, but we had it like there was 8 billion keys. Right? So I'm saying that it is a very interesting idea that this world works with balance. And if it has experienced inefficiency, it is time for itself to efficiently balance itself out. Right? I don't know what it was, but I think after the year of 1991, I think starting in the 90s, a generation of I don't know how to say it. Let's say it like this. In martial arts, there's an idea, they say, once the student is ready, the master appears. So, once you were capable to be conscious, a world appeared. Now, it is up to you as a being to choose how you want to conduct your life. At the same time, when I say your life, it depends on how you understand what the idea of you is representing. We often think we are our ideas. We think we are the ego. In some sense, in speech, yes, you kind of have to be. But outside of speech, you're actually not your ego. You're actually an unknown witnesser. Or better term for it would be witnesseer. It just fits perfectly, doesn't it? Those two words, letter linked. Witness and seer. Witnesseer. So you have been the space where your life has been happening, and you have been watching it as the space. And it's another way of saying the brain found an ingenious way to experience the texture of a world outside of the skin. The brain is advanced. We're literally like advanced biochemical technology, just chilling, just being like, yo, I don't know what to do with my life. It's like, oh my God. It's like, and then person looks in the mirror. It's like, no way. You know, who knew? Every human being is a 4.5 billion year old evolutionary opportunity. Think about the civility. Do you understand? When I was younger, so easily I was like, yo, there's evil people in the world. There's cruelty, there's violence, right? Oh my God, the superhero should beat the bad guy. It was so fucking easy when I was young, right? It was so easy for something else to lose. But when you see it's humans on both sides, right, there comes this rage. I don't know, it's like I have never had an anger, believe it or not, about, like, I don't know how to tell you this. Like, I am not angry at humans. I'm not angry at the species. I'm not angry at do you know what? My anger, I would say my rage is just in the sense that something advanced is present, but it's not being completely accessed. And you know, that breaks my heart. Why? Because that means we're more than our what we're accessing. Isn't that sad? Right? Whoever you are, right? Imagine you're like, who was it? I think it was Patrice O'Neill, the stand-up comic, this legendary stand-up comic. And what did he say? Right? He was saying as if like, yo, there's some comics who they go get a job and the job is satisfying, it's incredible, but in some sense they forget about their comedy, right? And it's like a diamond that actually gets lost in the dirt. And the point is, there are 8 billion diamonds that must be found by the future. And we are those diamonds. You know, there's this rage I was talking about. It's a rage that comes, right, when you know the species deserves something way bigger than how it's behaving, right? So it's like, how do people say, okay, yo, man, you know, that human being, that 80-year-old man is acting childish? Like, how can somebody say that statement, right? Okay, not 80-year-old man. Let's say that like 60-year-old, 50-year-old man. Okay, let's say that 40-year-old man is acting childish. Okay. And so what does this statement mean? That 40-year-old man is acting childish. That means it's an insensitivity to how the world is a collective event. It's like an orchestra, right? But when you become super egotistical, you think it's a solo play of your own. Do you understand? Like the conductor, which is nature's, let's say, rhythms, is moving its stick, and then there's one in the orchestra, everything's playing awesome, right? And then the human species started, like this violinist started to go in its solo crazy violin. And the conductor was like, buddy, I'm trying to perform in front of God here. Nature is like, yo, human being, human species, yo, human consciousness, I'm trying to perform in front of God and you're messing up my act, right? And then the human consciousness, is like this violinist has become so consumed by his own instrument that the human species has started to, like, literally all the other species have put down their instruments and everybody's just watching the violinist. Even the conductor's like, who the hell am I anymore? You know? And everybody's, so what that means is it's a centralization of the human thought, right? So, to speak about transcendental agencies, this part's going to be abstract, so listen to this part playfully. But this is how my inner realms has fathomed it. Everything you see that is existing and happening right now on the planet has a karmic footprint, but it also has a future karmic footprint. What that means is every action is in some sense giving itself access to a sort of destiny. So what does this mean? This means right now we can see the future, but doesn't mean we can see how the future will happen. We can see a future, okay? That's the ability of the mind, right? The person's like, yo, why do I have a mind, you know? And the realization comes, oh yeah, to wonder about it, right? That's the great journey of the lifetime. What do you think spirituality is? You don't think spirituality is weird ritualism. That was like Brahmanism, a phase, right? That was old world methodology before they had realized that the new world was not burdened, right? That's the privilege of consciousness. Consciousness has in some sense stepped above the environment's limitation. So Mr. Within's vision on transcendental agencies would start off with the question is that what would a transcendental company look like? A transcendental company would be in some sense something we would see a fractal representation. So it would be as if we would need to see as let's say smaller examples. So what's an example of some sort of transcendental company? Okay, and we can say a perfect example of it is a business, but a business for an animal that doesn't have human consciousness, right? So imagine, right, like a zoo, okay? Imagine a zoo, okay? And the animals are all there and the lion can move in its big cage, right? And the lion doesn't even remember where it's from and all of this, right? It has an amnesia, right? And imagine out of nowhere, suddenly this gatekeeper comes and drops food in the cage. Right? Out of nowhere, suddenly kind beings and blessed beings and graceful beings are born into the world. Geniuses are born into the world and whatnot, as the legends go. Trust me, it's like weather. Just like there's sunny days and rainy days. There's moments where human beings arise, and the idea is that if you are not grateful for your humanity, you will descend. What does that mean? That means if you didn't appreciate how you were human, then it's as if you didn't appreciate for how long you were an animal, and this is now the conscious opportunity. Do you understand? Everything is using one another, right? At first I was like, okay, it's kind of weird. It's like there's one outer realm, and then every person has their own inner realm, so that means there's 8 billion inner versions of the earth, right? And then at some point I was like, wait a minute though, that's kind of implying 2 worlds, right? And you know what it is? This is why the soul can never be objectively or subjectively pinpointed. Because it's identifying as the space where they are found. Do you understand? You know, that means, let's say a human being believes in the idea of God. God is inconceivable, so what are they believing in? They are believing in their idea of God, but then they realize God cannot have any partner, so their ideas of God, or whatever view they have on God, and whatever God actually is like different, right? There's a very beautiful story here. I mean, there's counter views to this too, right? There's a beautiful story of Moses, shared in the poetry of Rumi 700 years ago. In his poetry he writes, he says Moses, right, this was after Moses had seen God in the flames and whatnot, in the fire. You know, Moses was, I think each prophet has been given an attribute. Moses was the one who saw God, I believe, right? The one who saw God. Anyways, Moses was, this is after the commandments and after all this, and Moses is going in this town, and then he sees a shepherd, okay? And the shepherd is combing his sheep, and the shepherd is singing and just very jolly and happy and blissful. And the shepherd is looking at his sheep and he's saying, God, let me take care of you. Let me comb your hair. Let me be this and that, right? And the shepherd is doing this, okay? Now Moses sees this in Rumi's poem. He's depicting this scenario. And Moses sees this and goes up to the man and scolds him. And he says, hey man, what are you saying? This is a sheep. Don't call a sheep a god. God is beyond the sheep. God is beyond the skies. God is the creator of all. And then this shepherd, who was just in his innocence, suddenly gets scared, as if he's doing something wrong. That's the tragedy of divine misuse. Ooh. It's heavy. And so when Moses says this guy, he feels upset or something, and he becomes silent and he apologizes and he leaves. And later that night in Rumi's poem, God suddenly appears like God's angel or voice. A divine voice comes to Moses and says, how dare you? Oh my God. The divine tells Moses, how dare you tell my creation how to worship me? Because only I see what is in their hearts. No human can. Do you understand? The soul can, but no human can. Do you understand? It's this strange thing that it's kind of like it's impossible for a human to completely love, right? Because that complete love is not human. Because it's including both sides, the dehumanized and the humanized. So Moses next day runs, trying to, unseal his heart that his ignorance had sealed. And he goes to the shepherd and he hugs him and he apologizes. And he just spends the day helping him or something, I don't know. But that was the idea, right? And, to be honest, I'm just here looking at these temporary creatures that looked at the world and freaked out and started telling themselves stories and then got lost in their stories and now are trying to find the real world but don't realize the whole thing is in some sense a linguistic simulation, right? So in some sense, Do you understand? We're like actors in a film. We in a film set we didn't create, and in a film we didn't direct, right? But as the actor has director power over itself. Think of it this way: the director is the director of the whole film, right? Everything about the film, but the actor is the director of the actor. You know, director of himself, right? But of course, an actor that doesn't listen to a director is like, you know, he's not even on the right film set, you know. I don't know, guys. Maybe in the future, you know, I'd have a career in film. We'll see how that goes. So, let's see, what else can I say here? So the idea of a transcendental agency. In the Bhagavad Gita, there's these things I gotta say for viewers to consider, and then I'll share my experience of it. Okay. Okay, let me see. In the Bhagavad Gita, right, there's a passage that says anybody who uses an intermediary, let's say you're worshiping an intermediary shaped transcendental God figure. Okay, let's say you worship Hanuman. Let's say you worship Krishna. Let's say you worship, you know, whatever. Let's say you like even you. Let's say you're somebody who worships Yoda in Star Wars.
Care instructions for my guest
I mean, 100% like Star Wars fans who've taken like psychedelics have 100% talked to Yoda. Like 100% there should be a group of people who've like, you know. In the Bhagavad Gita, it says if you worship an intermediary, if you don't take the direct path, worshipping a god or worshipping a person as like a god or something like that. Now, Christianity is a different discussion, right? It can't easily be put in the context of what I'm saying. You know. So the traditional mystical idea was go directly to the inconceivable source of being. Don't use like an intermediary, right? Don't use like a detour, like an higher archetypal detour. Okay? Now, in monotheistic tradition, they're also like God has no partner. So this is why there's a story that Abraham, you know, broke all the people's idols, and they came back and they're like, yo, Abraham, did you do this? And he had put the hammer beside his one statue he hadn't broke. And he's like, no, this statue did it. And they're like, this statue isn't alive. You know, this statue couldn't have done it. And he's like, yo, if the statue couldn't have done it, you know, in some sense, then how can it be a god? Do you understand? It's so beautiful. Human beings have always been compassionate. Consciousness is a compassionate movement. You know why? Because after we've taken care of ourselves, what have we done? We've taken care of others. Do you understand? Do you know how many people on the planet right now, right? I remember I saw this video on YouTube. This guy's car stopped literally on this rail track And this motorcyclist, this fat, like next level powerful individual, stepped out of like the motorcycle, and he pushed the car alone off the rail, the car that had stopped working, right before the train could hit it. And when the guy pushes the car and dodges the train, he just jumps up celebrating in the sky. And that is an advanced moment. That's the power of humanity. That not only do we lift ourselves from the shadows of wherever we are, we lift the species up. Do you understand? It's like everybody's climbing a mountain. The lesser economical class is on the edge. They're all falling from the cliff. Those on the top, they're close to the summit, but the hilarious thing is the summit of this world is not reachable physically. So once you reach ultimate physical power, strength, imagine in all dimensions, physical dimensions of life, you were knowledgeable and able and healthy. Then you would be like, okay, what else? And then the unknown comes, right? But the way the unknown works is an ability of an intelligence to interact with that which is not the original alphabet of conception of image it has accepted. There's like, imagine a poetic statement like the heavens are calling us home. Do you know what it is? I think if you're secular, or here, if you're religious, you probably think what is on the other side of the whale is like angels. Right? Like spirit guides, guardian angels, this idea. But if you're secular, this is Mr. Within's view, this is my view, right? And when I say I'm secular, I'm no language can define me, right? Because I'm honest enough to realize something unknown is happening. So anyways, whatever, I'm going off topic. Let me go back to this idea of transcendental agency, okay? So let me tell you how for me it started. In 2014, I was in UK Birmingham. I was enrolled as a mechanical engineering international student, okay? And I remember I had this very small like accommodation room. And suddenly I had this idea of Mr. Within's gift, and my mind had kind of seen maybe like the double-edged view of that like sentence, okay? And then the idea came, the sentence literally, it was as if it was typed like a typewriter. It was written in my mind. 10,000 talks for the betterment of mankind. So when that came and YouTube was just starting off, right? And I remember I had uploaded bunch of Alan Watts and Terence McKenna videos. And so what happened was that I non-stop started giving talks like a machine, to a point where everybody around me was like, whoa, right? And what I mean by that is that every day I just felt this calling of getting the phone and pressing the record button on my iPhone 3 at the time and just start talking. And it was as if the words were there. Do you know, it was as if in my youth I felt my imagination didn't exist. Not that it didn't exist, I felt it wasn't there. But then I realized, right, that it wasn't empty. That my life had gone by me thinking that there was imagination didn't mean anything and was unreal, and creativity had no value, and I wasn't a creative person, and I just had this athletic vision, right? But then at some point, it's as if you begin to see, wait a minute, no. The mind is an access to a hidden world. So imagine some kid who wanted to be a soccer player was like, whoa, there's this advanced thing going on here, right? So which is the path? To continue, this world is an opportunity to get to experience one, like an existential self, or an existential position it's kind of like the body is changing at a certain speed, but the mind is changing so much faster than the body that the mind is experiencing various angles of the body, right? So it's kind of like our brain is leaving behind a trail of how it's self-simulating every moment until we sleep. Pretty much think about it this way, right? I'll go back to the metaphor of the zoo. The animals, right? Imagine they have no memory of their past and they're just in the zoo, and it's like their intuition knows they're not designed for that environment. Like on some deep level they know. So that's kind of like a corporate interference. Something corporatization of nature, right? Like a zoo, okay? Like imagine an alien species came and took a bunch of animals and also took a human being. And it's like, I want these animals for my zoo. Right? We'd be like, get out of here, punk. You know, like the whole species would fight back to defend that single human. And they're like, why? Why would the species fight for one human? Because that one human represents our main position. If they hurt one human, they will hurt all humans. Do you understand? Like, that's the idea, right? That's why the superhero was like, okay, maybe I should punch this guy so hard he doesn't stand up anymore, right? Why? Because he's like, in some sense, the world has already too much inefficiency. The world, the Greek mythology kind of entertains this notion that the world started from chaos. So evil people are not doing anything new. Do you know how much savagery has gone on? Do you know how much savagery before, like, our human evil, there was like animal viciousness going on here? And evil is really when you know better and you do something wrong. Like, that's the point of evil, right? If you don't know better, it's like it's still accidental. But doesn't mean the accident is wrong. I mean, still. My experience has been something like, I don't want to say I'm an employee. Like, I've had an inner realm experience throughout these years of giving these talks every day. Okay, like something happens, like experientially when you talk about existence all the time, right? I'm some person who can kind of like testify for that. Okay, and you know what happens? You begin wondering about how you've been holding the world so far. So for me, I feel like I became so disinterested in being a self and in the world to some degree that I felt like, yo, it's kind of like life is like what happens is it's like you right now we have comfort being a physical entity, but when you communicate for a while, you suddenly begin to see that something else is moving and you're getting comfort with that movement. Okay, when you do it for a while, that movement becomes automatic, right? So after some point, like, the depth of these talks is not a matter of just ideological discovery. It's also just a matter of how much I want the attention to zoom in on something, right? Because if I zoom in too much on something, that archetype begins to be found everywhere. So I have to zoom myself out of it. You know, it's the same thing as like if somebody is in a room with someone else, they're going to grow fond of that person, right? So similarly, right, at the same time, I'm trying to give a metaphor that when it comes to the human ability to move as a subjective entity, the way it happens is that the subjects are moving in front of something. And think of it this way, it's like before you do anything, you're thinking, right? People say think before you act. Well, what does that mean, to think before you act? It means your brain needs to self-simulate the moment a couple times. Kind of like in chess, how they say once you found a good move, relax and try to find a better move. So I don't know, for my experience, there was a lot of writing. It started off with writing, then I started recording, myself. Like, I would put a chair in the mornings. I'd read this thing that Salvador Dali had, this semi-conscious technique of drawing art. So I was like, okay, why not in the morning? Like, I still had like my, sleepwear on, and I just went and sat on a chair in the morning, kind of like half awake, and would just start talking. So overall, like, I could say that I went on this journey where I began just being content with the moment, being preferenceless in the moment, and then realizing in the moment the awareness, the attention that is actually the main pilot here, can move in various ways. So the idea is, it's not that you're just a human being. It's kind of like it's like the human is a part of how the moment is being, you know? It's like, is the human being, or are we being human? That means, do we value the human shape more, or that space of being more? When I saw the new age community when I was younger, I was like, okay, this is some cool shit, right? But then I was like, it's a little too happy all the time kind of vibe, you know? And not that happiness is wrong. I'm not saying you shouldn't be happy, but I'm saying there is such a thing as emotional intoxication. Okay? For example, some celebrities, right, they're worshipped by their fans, and then they emotionally, extract an identity out of an emotion from that moment, right? And then they kind of lose themselves. If somebody says Mr.Within, by transcendental agency, do you mean like religious people doing God's work? Do you mean spiritual people following the logos? Do you mean like aliens, like, employing human behavior consciously? What do you mean, right? And I would say, for me, there's really three values here, three dimensions, kind of. There's a visible dimension. Objects are limited by physical universal laws. Then there's an invisible dimension where subjects are actually limitless when it comes to physical universal laws. So I can imagine myself flying in the sky, but I can't fly physically into the sky. What does that mean? That means my brain can do things my body can't, but it can only experience it in a projection level. I've had moments where I've communicated to my moment. I'm a person who, I would say, before this year, 2023, like ever since when I was young, like when I was super young, I was scared of the dark. I went to my mother and she told me just say God's name 7 times. And so ever since, every night I would be just saying, I would say God's name 7 times and then I would fall asleep easy. And in some sense, I was introduced to prayer way before meditation, believe it or not, before I knew what meditation was. There were moments in my youth where I would just go in my room, turn off the lights, and just lie on my bed. And, I would calm down that way, but later on I realized like that's kind of like meditation, So, see, I don't want to say like the other side, if there is, let's say, for those who consider it, the other side of the whale. It seems to reflect what you deep down are, or what some part of you deep down knows you are, okay? Like we can't escape ourselves, believe it or not. Like we can escape the judgment of others, but we can't escape the judgment of ourselves. And also we can't escape the judgment of our world. These are two things we can't escape. So, I mean, honestly, I guess I could be an example of a human being who trusted a vision that it was just like a passing thought that I take so seriously that it became this podcast. So it was literally as if like some part of me found this idea at the same time, the way I had lived and like my background and all of this. It was as if, like, it's funny when you do something that you're good at, it feels like you were meant to do it. I don't know why, but it's not that you feel you're good at it. It's like nothing. It's just like art, right? Where they say it's like the artwork is never complete, or when does the artist know the artwork is complete? And some people are like, you can endlessly keep adding things, and somebody was like, okay, when there's nothing else to take away from it, right? For example, human beings are like when like, I don't know, let's say human psychology, man and a woman, right? When they see each other, like, let's say from the woman's perspective, the mind's like, okay, what kind of husband is he gonna be? Okay. So she's in some sense seeing a future person, like a future superhero, or even the guy is seeing like the girl as his future like superhero wife, you know. And so the idea is that the person's like, okay, does this person need to change for me to love what their soul, like what they're being, right? Or do I like love their being just by how it's being, right? It's incredible how much of reality is just structure. Everything has structure. It's kind of like shape, color, space, like density in sense of like mass. And it's bizarre. Do you understand? Like when you look at mathematics and science, it's all about the shape of reality. Like who knew inside the atom was a geometrical shape? Do you understand? That means the truths of our minds have been shape bound. Now, for a human being to wonder about the shapeless, people are like, yo, I don't like spirituality. I don't like, what that could mean. You know? This world is really honestly like an airport. Airport Earth. I think I could turn that into a novel. I don't know, guys. I don't know what to say. I mean, I've kind of been like an honest fool, trusting my intuition. I've been kind of like learning from everything that's been happening that I've been conscious of. And when I say a transcendental agency, I'm just saying, just like the whole zoo thing, or imagine like we have like a charity that goes and saves seals. Okay, or imagine we have a charity where Navy SEALs go and save SEALs, okay, as part of their training or something. So imagine these Navy SEALs saving these SEALs, like in a Navy SEAL way, evacuating them from like the orca's mouth, like. The orca's about to eat the seal, and like 3 Navy SEAls suddenly jump from the sky, like on the orca's head, and it, like the Navy SEAL, like the seal survives. You know what I mean? I'm saying, let's say a charity that goes and gets rid of plastic that's around the neck of turtles. Okay. So that's like a transcendental agency. That's an example of a lesser world transcendental agency. So it is fair to say that we have a great clue that human corporatization of reality is, for the lesser animal species, for squirrels and birds, equivalent to a transcendental agency. So if we think of in the future the progress, most likely there's going to be transcendental agencies, right? Pretty much they're going to be like maybe called just TAs, Or imagine in the future there's transcendental conscious agencies, transcendental semi-conscious or subconscious agencies, or pre-conscious agencies, and then the unconscious agency. The idea is the human intelligence organizes and administers And really the sign of the soul being divine is because it's converting chaos. That's like a very big clue. If somebody says, is divinity the consciousness of order in chaos? Or is divinity the presence of the universe's intelligence prior to how your personality, personalizes reality? So to be honest, the idea of a transcendental agency, it's just this notion that, there was a time in my life where I felt, what was the year? Time travelers from the year 2574 were in some sense like I felt like the future. I felt like my future self was the only one capable of knowing what will happen to me. In a context where the future self of everybody is God, in the same sense that everything came from God and everything returns to God. On this side of the coin, we think everything started from the past and in some sense, right, is going to the future, but in actuality, everything started from the future and returns to the future. We're on the return side. It's a circle, okay? Your mind is coming back from the future, right, to a past that doesn't exist for that. Right? But so what that means is your body is walking from the past to the future. Your mind is walking from the future to the future. But it's but to your body, it would be equivalent to your mind is walking from the future to the past, and your body's walking from the past to the future, but your future to itself is walking to the future. Because for the future self, it's circular. Time is circular. Now, for us, is a straight line here. Do you understand what time being circular means? It means the moment of your death is the exact moment before your birth. That's what it means. But anyways, this is in the sense of mysticism and metaphysics and whatnot. Anyways, guys, this idea is very interesting. Share your thoughts and comment below. And share, subscribe, comment, like, join. What else can I say? If you're somebody who's working, let's say, for a transcendental agency, or you're involved in some sort of, let's say, entity interaction, okay, or some sort of divinity, something that was advised for me personally by the Logos early on was that not to get attached to a face in the unknown. So that's very important. Don't get attached to a face. Don't get attached to a personality. Don't worship people, right? But in some sense, wonder about where the eyes of their heart were pointed at, So what I mean by this, when I say eyes of the heart, let me say it this way. Imagine though there's a company called Universe Co. Okay? And in this Universe Co., it had in some sense employees, okay? And visible employees. This company called Universe Co., imagine, or World Co., has this thing called visible employees. These visible employees are physical entities. They're interns here in an endless, eternally changing world, right? For interns for 100 years, okay? At World Co, at Universe Co, at World and Universe Co, okay? So as an employee, imagine this Universe Co is like, yo, these employees don't know what to do. Let's give them invisible supervision. right? So, or let's say they dedicated certain, let's give them invisible management. Okay, and so it's as if the divine will was like the management, upper management, the logos, and among human beings, supervisors were selected, or think about like prophets or messengers and whatnot. So this employee has been in this company and it's been an intern for a while, and now it's wondering, okay, how do I go beyond this? And it's realizing it has to know what upper management wants from upper management. You understand? It's another way of saying knowing what the one above you, what the boss of your boss wants from your boss, right? As an employee, right? Like that's the thing, right? So it's kind of like trying to understand the relationship of God with the logos, and then the relationship of the logos with man. Now the logos is really actually what it is it's an invisible collective mind of all beings that are conscious in this realm. It's like a invisible mind field. Okay, that's what the logos is. When it comes to God, God's individualism is the soul. God's collectivism is in the inconceivability of a drop in an ocean. That means imagine a drop falling from the sky into an ocean and vertically, and the drop is like it has a belief system, it creates a knowledge, it creates an ideological system. It's like, I'm a drop, this is the only truth, da 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 da. Suddenly hits a horizontal dimension, suddenly realizes it has the presence of an ocean. Energetically, you're the presence of the whole thing. Existentially, you are present on earth as a creature. Experientially, you're present as a conscious psychological agent. I mean, I don't want to say we're like agents. Yo, man, are we men in black because we bought jackets, black jackets that were on sale? It's like, no, What we are really are people who don't just appreciate movies, but are people who appreciate the fascination of how far the human mind can go. You see, our ancestors, they were awesome. They physically explored the world. Now it is up to us to non-physically explore reality. And there's so much more. Anyways, thank you for listening. Rise, man.